Oui, donc bonjour tout le monde et bienvenue dans notre channel. So welcome back everyone, welcome back to Frenchie with Karen. And today we will be going through something that is very important, and I think something that a lot of French speakers want to be able to do, which is of course learning the French tenses. Now I do know that there are a lot of videos out there on the YouTube actual platform where they have like lots of different YouTubers talking about various different tenses, how to conjugate them, and so on and so forth. So in my previous videos, I have gone through like the past tense, the imperfect tense, but then I don't think there has been a very conceptualized sort of video where it mentions all the major tenses that should be very useful for like any high school students or students that have just begun learning their French tenses. So in this specific video, we will be going straight on and we will be learning about like all of the French tenses in about 10 minutes. So make sure not to skip any part of the video and try your best to gain as much knowledge as you can. If you feel like you've missed out on anything, that's perfectly fine because you can always revisit the video. Before I actually go on to the video, make sure to subscribe to the video and like it, and also share it to all your friends and family, so that because like that's the overall purpose of this video, because we want to try and send out this video and reach out to as many people as possible. So this is what we will be trying to do. So moving straight into the video, as I've said, we will be going through a timeline, which you would be able to see on your screen right now. So now, there is specific things that you should be able to look forward to. And before I actually do that, make sure that you are subscribing. Okay, so as I've said previously, there are three major parts of the tenses. So we have the present tense, le passé, le présent, et le futur. Now, quelle est la différence entre eux? So what are the differences between them? And what are the tenses that we should be actually looking at while we are learning about the tenses? Now, the first very important thing is I want to focus on the present tense. So in the present tense, we have le présent, l'impératif, and also en train de. So, okay, we will go through it one by one. So for le présent, so as I've said, it's the present tense. Now the conjugation is basically very simple. So for example, je mange. Now je mange, what does je mange mean? So I eat, or it could be I am eating. So this is what we mean when we actually say je mange. Now, for example, if you're talking about the conjugation, there will be separate videos specifically on the present tense. So do make sure that you're actually going to check it out whenever you get some free time. Okay, and then the next very important part is impératif. So for example, we have mange, manger, mangions. So that is eat in singular tense. And then we have eat in the plural tense. And then when we say mangions, because it is O and S, so that refers to the idea of plural, but then the subject would be we. So it's going to be let's eat. Okay, but the subject is we. So that is the idea of imperative. So imperative is when you're giving a command, you're giving an order to a specific person, then you're going to be using the imperative. Okay, the next part is je suis en train de. Je suis en train de. So what does this mean? For example, je suis en train de manger. So I am currently eating. So when we say je suis en train de, that means I'm currently doing a specific thing. And then after the word de, you're going to go into your actual form, which is the infinitive, and then you are going to make sure that you don't conjugate that. So je suis en train de, that is very important. So in this specific present tense, we've talked about impératif when you're giving a command, le présent. So le présent is basically before you actually conjugate something, that's when you use le présent. And then je suis en train de, so that is another form that you would use very often in a present tense. Now, moving straight on to le passé. So after the present tense, we're going to look something at the previous part of this timeline. So personally for me, these are the 4 tenses that I highly recommend to like any high school student, because these are the tenses that I think if you use it correctly, mind you don't want to use all of these tenses if you don't know how to use them. So make sure that you actually understand before you actually make use of them in your examination. So, of course, first of all, I want to talk about passé composé. So here we have passé composé. Wait, qu'est-ce que c'est passé composé? So passé composé is like a compound tense. So it is a compound tense, and generally it is made up of, I would say it is made up of 2 things, which is the past participle and the auxiliary verb. So when you're talking about the auxiliary verb, often we would have 2 options. We would either use être or avoir, and then we have to use le past participe. Okay, now for past participe, you need to understand. So if you have a ER verb, you're going to have accent aigu. If you have an RE verb, the past participle will be the you. If you have the IR verb, it's going to be I. So these are all of the regular verbs. For the irregular one, there will be a specific video on that, but I will not go into that right now. Auxiliary, it's just between être and avoir. Now, if you're confused between them, you can watch my previous video, because again, I just want to go through the major tenses in this video specifically. The other very important tense that I personally believe is very, very important and very, very essential, I would say, is le passé récent. Now, it is possible that your French teachers, or maybe you've even never learned or heard about what le passé récent is. So passé récent is basically things that you've just done. So it is done in the past, but you've just done it, okay? So for example, I'm writing on my iPad and I've just done it. So I've done this in the past and I've already done it, so that is le passé récent. So how do we construct le passé récent? So you use je viens de manger. So manger will be your verb. This will be in the infinitive form. So what you have to say is, for example, I just ate, or I have just eaten. Okay, so this is the idea of je viens de. That is very essential for you to be able to understand this. Okay, the next important tense that I personally believe that a lot of students get confused with is l'imparfait. So l'imparfait et le passé composé écrire une confusion entre les étudiants. So a lot of students get confused between l'imparfait et le passé composé, and that's all right, which is completely natural, which I have already created a video. You just have to click the video up in the I button. So l'imparfait, so for example, we have je mangeais. Now again, the endings, I will not go specifically and I will not dwell into that specifically, but then just want to give you a heads up, l'imparfait is like the past progressive. So, for example, that means I was eating. So in the past, you're doing a series of actions and that is called I was eating. So it's very important for you to be able to understand this. Now, moving straight into the next important tense, est le plus que parfait. Now, I personally believe that this is not very essential. If you don't know how to use it, I think for a high schooler, I think that's completely fine. But again, it depends what syllabus you're trying to aim for and what grade you really want. But again, I do want to touch upon this tense. So, le plus que parfait, for example, je vais manger. Okay, so here, do you see? Avait. So what is avait? Avait is the imperfect here. So in this situation, we will have our auxiliary, but then the auxiliary will be in your imperfect tense. So whatever you have For example, être and avoir is the auxiliary. So you need to conjugate the auxiliary into the imperfect. And then your past participe is the same as your passé composé. So auxiliary will be either être or avoir. And this one is basically going to be the same, I would say, as your imperfect tense. Now, I do know that the past tense do contains a lot of different tenses, and I really highly recommend all of you to try some of the exercises if possible, whether it be in your textbook or any other possible websites that can give you these access. I do recommend one specific grammar workbook, which I have shown you towards the right-hand side as well. You would be able to find the description of that book below this video, and I have given them credits as well. Okay, so moving straight into le futur. Now, also I want to mention that if you want to get access to that workbook, make sure that you click on the link, because that's going to redirect you to an Amazon sort of page, and that's a place where you can get your workbook from. I do recommend this because this is a really good workbook, and I think it would be a very good opportunity for you to learn lots of different grammars. I personally myself, when I was in high school and preparing for my AS level French examination, I did use that workbook, and I do believe it is a really good starting point for anyone who may not be very good in grammar and who wants further support in grammar and want to make sure that you're using your grammar tenses very effectively in your examination. Okay, so moving straight into le futur. So for example, I want to mention 3 important tenses, which is le futur proche, le futur antérieur, le futur simple. So these are like very important tenses that I want to mention. Now, le futur proche is very basic. So you have your aller verb, and you just have to conjugate it into a present tense, followed by an infinitive verb. So how does this go? So, je vais manger. So the verb that you have, like aller in present tense, is going to be conjugated towards its present tense. So basically you have your vais, which is the conjugated form of present tense. And then manger is basically the infinitive form, so that's why you have to change it after the first verb, if that makes sense. So in general, you would have your subject plus your conjugated verb aller plus your infinitive. Okay, so this is a specific structure that you should be trying to follow, and this will actually help you a lot when you're trying to create future tenses. Now, another very important tense, I would say, and it is very similar, is le futur simple. So that is where you just have your actual future tense, and you would just have to add the endings, and we will specifically talk about this in another video separately. Now, le futur antérieur. So I do believe maybe you've never heard of this before, and that's completely fine, but I want to touch upon this. So le futur antérieur is when you can predict that you probably would have done something, will have done something by a certain amount of time. So a certain action that will occur by a certain amount of time. So you probably know that in the future, probably at 10 o'clock in the night, I am going to go for, let's say, taking a shower. So you know that by that time in the future, you will be able to finish something. So that is when you use le futur antérieur. Now, another example would be j'aurai mangé. So I will have eaten. Okay, and then you just complete the sentence, okay? So I will have eaten. Okay, so these were basically the main tenses that I wanted to cover. I did not cover about conditional and subjunctive because I wanted to focus on the indicative verbs specifically. But again, if you're preparing for your examination, I would suggest taking a little look on the conditional and subjunctive as well. If that's something you're struggling with, that's okay. I will create a separate video on that in the future. So be sure to subscribe to this channel and click in the like button so that everyone will be able to get the resource they need to be able to get. And again, make sure you're subscribing the video because that is a huge motivation for me, and it really helps me to really create more videos and be more inspired by your motivation. So thank you so much. I hope you liked this video. Until then, see you in my next video. Bye.